Warning: this podcast may contain graphic and triggering content. Please listen at your own risk. Each individual struggle is different, and everyone's recovery and healing journey is different. Please reach out to a certified medical professional if you need help. Welcome to episode 14 of Stomp the Stigma, the podcast aimed to fight the stigma surrounding mental health through education, awareness, experiences, stories, resources, and the vulnerable truth. Joining me to Stomp the Stigma today is Holly McCorriston. She is a former pharmacist turned life coach and mental fitness trainer, and she's here to share her insights into mental health and how you can heal yourself, your body, and your mind without the use of prescription drugs. Hello.
Hola. Hi.
How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
Good. Well, it is so nice to meet you.
Yeah, you too. It's fun. You see the picture and then you listen to the podcast, but it's like, they're together now.
Yeah, it's nice to put like an actual, voice to a face.
Yeah, pretty much. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm super curious about your transition out of pharmacy and this massive shift in your life.
Oh, yeah. It's, I was going to say, where do you want me to start?
I guess, what kind of led up to your decision to leave that industry and a career that as lucrative as pharmacy and I guess as stable in some sense? What led you to making that decision to just leave everything and move and start your own thing?
Honestly, it didn't feel very good anymore. Yeah. I don't know. How much do you know about pharmacy?
Well, my sister and brother-in-law are both pharmacists.
Okay. So you know quite a bit.
A little.
Yeah. Or what they've told you or whatever. So are they in retail?
No. No,
okay.
They're in the hospital.
So they probably have quite a bit of a different perspective than I do. But yeah, I graduated from the U of S in 2009, and I took a job in my hometown, so Kindersley, Saskatchewan. And I mean, I was always a overachiever for sure. Anyway, I don't even honestly know how I ended up in pharmacy. People are like, "Oh, you must have really wanted to help people," and I'm like, "No, I really didn't know what I wanted to do." And I walked past the pharmacy office, and there was a poster that if I paid $75 by Friday, I could apply.
Oh wow!
And I got in. So then, of course, the story is, "Oh man, pharmacy's so hard to get into," and I'm like, wasn't hard for me. I don't know.
Yeah, I was listening to, I guess, the admission process for my sister. It seems way harder than just handing over a text.
Your marks had to be quite good. I don't know. And I mean, it was funny because I was always a really good student. And I think they tell you when you go from high school to university, you should expect your marks to drop about 15%. And mine did. But that meant they were still in the mid-80s.
Oh, wow.
So, I don't know. It was just kind of one of those things. But I never liked it. I really never liked it. Mm-hmm. But I was smart. I had the degree. I've done a lot of trauma work the last 2-3 years, too. So, I recognize now that I was probably in pharmacy to please my mom. I was, the first daughter in my family, in the family to kind of go to school. It had never really been told that it would be an option. I was just always going to school because nobody else had. But yeah, I never really cared for it. And then I worked in my hometown right up until December 2020. But yeah, so retail pharmacy, especially in Saskatchewan, has been changing since the day I graduated. It was graduate and you're okay, trying to figure it out. You're a 23-year-old, ruling the world. And then they're oh, now you can do this. 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 Now you can do that. And you have to do all the stuff that you used to do. And you have to do it in the same system and the same workflow with the same amount of staff.
Yeah.
I mean, and with everything going on right now in healthcare, it was just more. right? It was just more and more and more and more and more and more and more. And I didn't work just in Kindersley. I did some relief work up north. I worked in the Ronge, Saskatchewan. So that's like a primarily Indigenous population, really different clientele up there, but still just as crazy. Like you're literally like, they were doing 500, 600 scripts a day. It's like you're a vending machine.
Wow.
Yeah. Very little time for real quality care. You're not really getting to know your patients. Like, and that's kind of why I had to decide to leave. I'm like, I'm a cog in a vending machine. Oh, I was like, people come in, they're in pain. We give them pills for their symptoms instead of addressing why they have symptoms. That's so fascinating.
Yeah.
So, and then of course you have to do all your own work to kind of unpack that and like, you know, is it just me or is there something actually to this? But like, it was so out of alignment. I was like, I'm not actually helping people. Yeah. It's like, I'm just like, and of course you say that to people and they're like, but people are always going to need pharmacists and drugs. And it's like, well, yeah, you're right. Until they're ready to not need them anymore, they will need them. But I also don't need to be the person that gives them the pills.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, again, in unpacking all my own stuff, I was trying to fix other people. I was trying to help other people when they didn't necessarily want it. So it was frustrating for me to be like, why can't you just see if you would quit eating Eat More bars after dinner every night that you wouldn't need an amputation for your diabetes? So yeah, I burned myself out. Totally burned myself out. Like, and when you're a healthcare professional and you like know you need help, it's really hard to get it because right, you're cynical and you're skeptical. So it was like, I wasn't going to go to the doctor because I was like, I don't trust them. Like, they're horrible. Yeah. They don't know what they're doing. That's why I'm here. I'm the pharmacist. And I was like, the only thing they're going to do is try and put me on meds. And I knew I didn't want meds. I did an online CBT program. I don't know if you're familiar with cognitive behavioral therapy. But yeah, so I did that. But I didn't find it super helpful because it was like, I was so burned out that I was like at the waking up right before work and coming home from work and just like crying on the couch.
Oh my gosh.
And then of course, when you get together with your friends and family, you're complaining, right? It's the job, it's the this, and you're in victim mode and they're just colluding with you. They're like, oh yeah, you like, yeah, that sounds horrible. Like there's no, and so it's not really support. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So yeah, I kind of let myself get to that point. And then I hired a life coach because I didn't know what else to do. I was actually this close to opening up my own pharmacy.
Oh wow!
Because I thought that was the answer. So this would have been like 2 years ago, actually, like April 2020. Yeah, so April 2019. Yeah, I was having panic attacks at work. Like it was crazy, and it was just from that like lack of alignment. Like it was like I don't want to be here. I don't know what else to do. I'm desperate. But there was like this little whisper of like, you can't decide, you can't make any drastic decisions while you're desperate. Like, don't do it. Like that little whisper of 9 to 5, Monday to Friday for the next 10 to 15 years in your hometown. That doesn't sound like that's what you want.
Yeah.
So yeah, I couldn't make that decision. So I did hire a coach. It was like a terrifying moment. Like I think I just spent the first 4 calls just bawling on the phone. Oh my God. It's funny now, but I mean, it's not, but it is. I mean, because I'm a coach now, so I have the same thing happen. Once people get into a space where they feel heard and seen and understood, it just all starts coming out. Yeah. But they don't usually stay that way very long. It's usually like people usually turn around very quickly with the work that I do. So, totally burnt myself out in pharmacy. Just about opened a pharmacy, hired a coach. One of the first things I did in the coaching was I decided to assess my professional, like my investment in the profession, like how invested was I? So I went to the provincial conference in Saskatchewan, and then I actually went to the national conference in Toronto. So it was like last minute. I was like buying plane tickets. I was trying to see my family while I was there. I was also trying to quit drinking, like all of the things all at one time. I told you I was an overachiever. So I flew out to Toronto. Can't remember the exact sequence of events anymore, but yeah, I flew out to Toronto, had kind of my rock bottom moment in Toronto at the conference. where I was like, no, I'm going to not drink. I'm going to like wake up every morning and meditate and like walk to the conference along the waterfront. But they make it so easy. This was another kind of revelation I had. I'm at this professional conference.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be these professionals, these healthcare professionals that are looking after people. And everybody was miserable. Like everybody. It wasn't just me. And all of the social events were just like, everybody got hammered. And I'm like, why? I'm like, so this is the profession that's supposed to be like serving the people. And this is what we're doing to ourselves. Yeah. I'm like, this is fascinating.
Well, that's usually how it is at conferences and events like that. There's always an open bar or like alcohol of some sort. Like it's like the norm, I guess.
Yeah. No, it totally is. And I ended up speaking with a lot of students because I think these students were just like, because I was speaking differently than a lot of other people already. I was like, they were looking for some hope.
Yeah.
Because really the pharmacy profession is hurting. And especially with everything going on now. So yeah, I had a lot of students engaging with me. They were like, how come you weren't up on stage talking? And I wasn't a coach at this point. I was just literally like a broken human I had kind of woken up to the whole being present. Yeah. I had started I was like, okay, Holly, if you're going to go to work today, you're going to choose to be here. It's a choice. You walked in the door. You need to quit telling yourself that you're stuck here. Like you have to change the story. So as long as I kept going to the door, and then it was like, okay, you're with a patient. So it's like, if you're in front of me, I'm going to be with you. Yeah. Even if the phone rings, I'm not going to be like, because I used to split. It was like, oh shit, I need to go get the phone, but there's a person here. And like they tell you in your training, always get the phone because the person in front of you can see that the phone is ringing, but the person on the phone can't tell that you're with someone. Right. So you were constantly divided. Like your attention was always divided. And that was the other thing. I'm like, we're actually probably hurting more people than we're helping. And if you look at up the top causes of death, medical misadventure is actually number 3.
Wow.
So,
wow.
Yeah, this is the thing. People think they go to the doctor and the pharmacist to feel better, but your odds of actually having an intervention kill you are very high.
That's so crazy.
Yeah. So yeah, I was just at this conference and I was like trying to be as present as possible. And there was a leadership aspect to it as well. There was the chair of the Canadian Pharmacists Association had started a new kind of initiative of women in pharmacy leadership. So I was really interested in that because there aren't very many, like the profession is dominated by women, but there's very little women in ownership and sitting on boards and those kinds of things, right. Which I mean, now that I'm have a couple years of healing under my belt, it's like, oh, well, it's because, the imbalance of the feminine and masculine energy as well. Women, like I did the masculine patriarchal pharmacy, go, be, do for a decade, and it just about killed me. So I was like, I'm not doing it anymore. I came home from that conference and I said to my coach, I'm like, I think pharmacy needs a life coach. So I enrolled in life coaching, and my plan was originally to work with other pharmacists. But the more I kind of did my own work, the more I realized I really did want to help the patients as well. And it wasn't just the pharmacists. Yeah. Plus I still have a little bit of an edge. Like I think I'm still too close to it. Like I'm still like, I'm really not interested in that profession or like helping people in that profession because I don't necessarily agree with what we're doing in the profession. So, but when I do picture like myself, 2 years ago, sitting on the couch crying, trying to make that decision, I'm also like, oh yeah, they're really all just people. So that whole bringing people back to the humanity and whatnot. So. And then actually quitting my job was another thing. Like
that's a huge
really
step.
Wanted out, but like my coaching certificate was $10,000. So I thought I needed to stay and work to pay for that.
Wow.
And, plus you do need to have people to like experiment with.
Right.
So I got to, I had a coworker who had crazy anxiety, who also was contributing to my anxiety. Like we were feeding off each other. Mm-hmm. So as I learned how to ground myself and stay out of that energy, just seeing how it impacted her was also really cool, actually. And then also seeing how, as I developed my coaching skills and my ability to ask more questions, how my interactions with my patients changed. But then I started getting in trouble for spending too much time with the patients. Because I think I talked to somebody. There was a 40-year-old gentleman who had come in for like an antidepressant. And I said, I think I spent about half an hour, 45 minutes with him. And he's like, I have never had this kind of conversation before. He's like, this has been immensely helpful. And you have done more for me than any doctor or therapist I've ever talked to. And I was like, cool. I'm so glad. And then I never heard from him again. So I don't know if he found other measures or what he did, but I don't think he ever took the drugs because he didn't want them in the first place.
Oh. Wow.
So yeah, happens quite a bit. Anyway, yeah. And I had originally hoped to be done in June of 2020 because I had even gone so far as to like get my replacement hired because I'm such a good person and such an overachiever.
Wow.
But then COVID, and she wasn't able to write her exams, and then she failed her exams, and then I had like 2 coaches, my therapist, and like several friends that were like, so you don't have a reason to stay here that's actually your reason. You're staying because she didn't pass her exams, because there's nobody else. They haven't hired someone else for your job, even though they've had like 6 months notice that you're leaving. So yeah, I just picked a date and I quit.
Wow, good for you.
Never had an exit interview. I was with that company for 11 and a half years.
I didn't get an exit interview?
I didn't get an exit interview. I emailed 2 people, including HR, and said, hey, would there be an opportunity to like do some internal coaching? I could help create some online programs, online trainings for our patients since everything's going virtual. Nothing.
Wow.
They just let me walk.
Oh my gosh.
So
that says a lot.
I mean, again, the victim story of, I should be like, they should be following up with me. I was here for 11 and a half years. Aren't I important? And then, you talk to anybody that's left a corporate job. They're like, no, you're just a number, sweetie. Like, you're literally just a number. They'll replace you. Yeah. So, but so I've been out for 4 months now.
Is this like weight just lifted off of you now?
In a way, it feels really good. But in a way, I'm also like, I'm trying to find where my voice is in that.
Yeah.
Because I think it's important that people realize there is no magic pill.
Yeah.
If you're not feeling good, but again, that's kind of in the system and the programming and how we're raised. You have a boo-boo or you have an ouchy stomach or whatever, you take a pill. You take a pill. Here's some Gravol. Here's this. Here's that. Yeah. Let's go to the doctor. Let's go to the expert. Let's go see what's wrong with you. What's wrong. It's everything's very pathologized. So I'm trying to figure that out. And because it's so divisive right now with COVID and, the science is king and maybe science isn't king. So yeah, I'm kind of just trying to figure that out and also, get my business started because it's like, at the end of the day, you do have to support yourself and make some money. And I really do want to help people. And the fact that I've seen some of my clients go from like suicidal and refusing to tell one soul to like not knowing what their problem was 3 or 4 weeks later is pretty powerful to be witness to.
Wow, that's huge. Oh, that's amazing.
So, and I know you had said in your podcast that seems to be like a recurring kind of thing for you, is some of those thoughts coming in and whatnot. So yeah, I've been there, and I mean, and I even said that to my coworker that I had worked with for a decade. I'm like, do you know what it's like to have suicidal thoughts? And he's like, no. And I mean, I don't know if people are just not honest with themselves, but I was like, I think you need to hear about what it's like so that you can actually have some empathy for these people. Just because you don't understand doesn't mean it's actually that even big of a deal. Right. Again, I think we just need to validate more people where it's like, oh, okay, so you're having those thoughts. Let's talk about them. Let's not give them so much credibility. Let's just talk about them.
Yeah, and there's so much stigma around even talking about it, that like it's such a bad thing and like this something that we just can't talk about at all. So
well,
having these conversations.
I mean, a big thing that I have in my teaching and training too is the ability to hold space. And holding space is often, can you sit in your own discomfort while someone else is in theirs without trying to fix it or take it away or adjust it? Or because that's a big part of the problem is, you say, I've been having these thoughts, and someone else gets uncomfortable. So they want to run away from their own discomfort.
Yeah.
So they can't hold space for themselves or for you or for anyone else. So it's and even in the medical model, right? As soon as you say anything like that, you're a risk. You need more urgent care. You need more specialized care.
Yeah, exactly.
You're so broken. You're so broken that only the most special doctor can help you in your special thinking.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what if everybody was just equipped to hold space for that instead of like needing this hierarchical system that's so hard to navigate and access and pay for and whatever. So yeah, I think it's way more important that we just lead with curiosity, right? It's just like, oh, okay, well, tell me more about that. And I like to have morbid daydreams of like, what would happen if the meteor hit the world tonight? Like, what would happen if the power went out and just never came back on?
Wow.
How would our world change? How would our lives? And I say that to some people, and then they're like, if you ever need to talk to someone, like, I'm here. And I'm like, no. I didn't say it in like what if the power goes off and never comes back on? I said it in what happens if the power goes off and never comes back
like
on?
A curiosity
what would we do?
Thing.
And it also goes back to all the way to the pharmaceuticals, because I'm like, if the power went out and never came back on, how would everybody live without these chemicals?
Yeah. So do you think some of your burnout was caused by like a combination of your own kind of trauma and struggles and the pharmacy industry and the medical side of
Absolutely.
things? Yeah.
Absolutely. Like, I think I've definitely acknowledged my part in it.
Yeah.
And I do think burnout has a lot to do with the person. And that's the problem in treating burnout, is the people that are experiencing it are in it. So we're blaming the environment and everyone else, because that's part of burnout.
Yeah.
Right? Is your head gets so wrapped up in its own survival mode that it's everyone else's fault. So the first step to any healing is personal, like ownership, responsibility, and aware, and then self-awareness. So I did as much work as I could on myself, like including getting a somatic therapist, investing in a $10,000 coaching diploma. I did lots of courses. Like I took an intuitive healing course with another doctor online, and I was doing full moon circle, like all sorts of things. And I think you do get to a point where you're like, oh, yeah, maybe it's not just me. Maybe it is actually also the environment. Because I wasn't quite willing to admit that part, but I'm like, yeah, no, this is a shitty environment to work in. Which definitely led to it, because it was like, why are the phones not set up better? Why am I getting interrupted all the time? Because it's like one pharmacist, two assistants, phone ringing, counter. You're trying to do like complex calculations, med reviews, look after the nursing home, try not to kill people, but they need it yesterday while you're at it. So it's pretty interesting. And again, the pharmacists are scared. They're scared to stand up. They're scared to say anything, because if they do, they'll just hire someone younger to do it for less money until they burn out.
Yep.
It's literally a mill. And that's what the students were saying at that conference. They were like, well, we're scared, like, are there even going to be any jobs? And if we get a job, is it going to be fulfilling? And it sounds like it's crazy out there. And I'm like, it is. So I don't know. If somebody asked me today if they should be in pharmacy, I would tell them to run like the wind to something else, anything else. But you're right. It's safe. It pays well. It's not going anywhere. It was there. I still see patients on the street that are like, when are you coming back? And I was like, I'm not. Like I'm letting my license go. Like I do not like the thought of stepping foot back in a pharmacy and like just handing people pills when they don't know any better or they've never actually been informed. Just makes me like, it makes me want to barf. Like I can't do it. So And like, you know, and people, I'm expecting right now. So people are like, oh, if you only went back to work for a couple months, you get maternity leave from the government. I'm like, I don't want the government's money. Like, that's how badly I can't do it.
Wow. Good for you. Good for you for like making that change and taking that huge risk. But I mean, it seems like you are so much happier now and just.
Well, it is. Like, I'm in Calgary. My niece and nephew live 5 minutes away from here. Yeah, like I literally, it's a 20-minute walk to their house. So I put on my running shoes and I went over there the other day, and like the look on my niece's face when I walked in the door, like, bless my heart. She's so cute. She's like 4. She's 4.
That's the best.
So to get to spend time with these kids, rather than, I don't even know what I was doing. I don't even know. Because that's the thing, when you're in it, it's you just keep doing it. And there was just that question of like, is this it? You kind of get to your late 30s, I think. I don't know how old you are, but not late 30s. I was in my 29.
Yeah.
29 was probably like the, what are you doing? It was like the, is this it? You just work and then pay bills and take like a week-long vacation. And I was at the point where I didn't really have any friends because they'd all gotten married and had kids, and nobody wanted to travel. And so I started singles cruising, and now I have a international network of friends because I've done so much of that.
That is so cool.
It is cool. It was very cool. So I'm like, everyone's like, oh, this is all, I'm like, the new normal. I'm like, this was already my normal. I'm like, I had friends all over the place. And I mean, aside from the fact that, I haven't been on a plane since March of 2020, but again, we could probably talk about that all day too.
Oh my gosh, the thought of like singles cruising, like it sounds so much fun, but it also sounds like terrifying to me.
Well, it was. And this is the thing. Have you ever worked with a coach?
No.
Okay. So in coaching, we do a lot of work around identity. Yeah. So that's the question of who am I? Mm-hmm. Have you ever asked yourself, who am I?
Not really.
Okay. So 29 years old, I started asking that question, like, who am I?
Yeah.
What am I here for? What am I doing? Da, 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 da. And that very first singles cruise was terrifying, but also completely liberating, because I left not only my country, I left everybody I knew behind. I met a complete group of strangers, like through a travel agent. This is the thing; it's a facilitated process.
Right.
So you're not completely on your own. So you've got a plane ticket and whatever. And I had never cruised before; it was all new. And I was still drinking at the time. I'm sober. I'm almost 2 years sober, but I was drinking for sure at the time. And I would go. So I went to this party. I met all these people, and I remember like back to the wall, like kind of wallflowering and like just observing.
Yeah.
And the next day I got on the ship and I was like, I can be whoever I want to be. Like, I don't even think I told people I was a pharmacist, because I didn't have to be professional. I didn't have to be this serious, whatever I thought I was. And yes, I can thank alcohol for some of it, but the very first day, that very first cruise, I was in front of the entire ship at the sail away party in my bikini hula hooping.
Yes.
Oh, this is why we're here, to be present, to be joyous, to be open, to be like with each other, to smile and laugh and do goofy things and whatever.
Yeah.
Like, so I had lots of those moments. I also had some really not good moments, but that's like the one that was like, so that's the thing about identity, is especially when you get in a situation like that where you're like, it doesn't matter who I am, where I came from, how old I am, what color my hair is. Like, nobody knows me.
That is such a good point. I've always loved the idea of traveling by myself, but I'm also like terrified to do it. And I know that I'm like, I don't know, a little bit like socially awkward, I think. So when it comes to like meeting new people and being in like this new different setting with a group of people that you've never met before, like that terrifies me, but it also sounds like the best time and like so appealing to me. So I'm really torn because I want to travel, but
yeah, I've met so many wonderful people. And it's another example too of just like how you don't really know like, you've heard of the butterfly effect?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, you don't really know who you touch and when and, like, how it affects them, because I've had people, like, I don't even actually remember them, but they've, like, met me on a cruise or traveling or, at the pharmacy, and they've been like, oh yeah, that one thing you said to me or whatever, that thing you did, like, you really inspired me to, like, da-da-da-da. And you're like, okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's kind of all about, like, even like I was saying to the pharmacist, I'm like, just be with your patients. Like, that whole, people don't know, like, people don't remember what you said, people don't remember what you did, but they'll remember how you made them feel.
Yeah.
I
say
think
that all the time.
It's so true.
It is.
Like, absolutely true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's all about, like, can you look at your own energy? Can you stay, like, present and alive and open when you're with people, because they can feel it, even if, they're completely hijacked.
Wow.
Yeah. We like, in our mental fitness, we call, like, when somebody's sabotaged or, like, in their, like, completely distraught with their emotions, we call it an emotional hijacking. So, yeah. And I like that language, and, like, my family started using it because it's like, oh, that, my husband's hijacked, I'm going to not talk to him right now, because like, your inner ear actually closes. Like, you're not actually listening when you're hijacked.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Yeah. And then it's like, oh, right. So instead of me being over here going, oh my God, I can't believe they're having a tantrum, it's just like, what's going on with them has nothing to do with me. Just gonna, like, you're not gonna, like, turn around and meditate, or maybe you are, but it's just, the mental fitness practices, a lot of it's just, like, using little tiny steps to come back to your body, and just always, I don't know. One of the analogies I use is, like, windshield wiping your thoughts away, or, like, kind of bubble popping, all the CBT therapy type techniques they can give you for thought awareness. But then we take it a step further. So we're like, stop the emotion, like, stop it, just notice it, stop it, notice it. And then we encourage, like, what's called the self-command muscle, which is, like, actually choosing to shift. You're like, oh, I'm going into hijack, or I am hijacked and I don't want to be, I want to be this instead. So you choose. And we teach PQ reps. So they're just, like, 10 seconds of focused attention on one of your 5 senses, which is, like, the root level of, it activates the different parts of your brain. So if you've got your sabotage, survival brain on the kind of the left, kind of more of your right brain, and your hippocampus and your prefrontal neocortex, all the brain stuff, you can actually activate it by coming into your body and accessing, like, your inner wisdom and your innate, like, your gut instincts and stuff. But when you're hijacked and you're over in this left brain, you don't have access to any of that. Wow. So it's all about just, you have to be able to notice it. You have to be able to come back to yourself, and then also forgiveness, because it's like, you gotta have compassion for yourself, and that's the last thing, is just shifting to the sage perspective, which is either accept what's going on or turn it into a gift or opportunity, or you can activate one of the 5 sage superpowers, which is just, like, empathy, curiosity, gratitude, peace, joy, all of those things. So you shift into that and you're golden. So you're not necessarily bypassing, because you're still acknowledging the negative emotion, but you're using it as the signal that it's meant to be, not, like, staying with it. So the analogy is, you get your hand on the hot stove. Do you leave your hand on the burner? No. You take your hand off the burner and then you figure out what to do. But when we get hijacked or into those places, it's like trying to figure things out while you're still on fire. So it's not very helpful. But yeah, it's been life-changing stuff for sure. I was writing prescriptions for it before I left the store.
Oh, wow.
Well, somebody comes in and they're very obviously, I don't think I talked to a single person that wasn't struggling in the last year of my job. So
yeah.
Have you ever heard of positive intelligence?
No.
I'll text you the link, but yeah, I work with a company called Positive Intelligence, and they're kind of the originators of the mental fitness, and we're using it in coaching now, because, like, coaching is great. I love coaching. I've had done a lot of beautiful work with a lot of beautiful people inside coaching, But even in my own experience with it was, I felt really good for the first couple months, and then I kept falling back into the old patterns.
Mm-hmm.
And there were things that I couldn't get past, like my fear of being seen, which isn't very good if you're trying to run an online business. And I was really struggling with that. Am I going to coach pharmacists, or am I going to coach just anyone? Right. So the mental fitness piece was really integral for me being able to move ahead with my business and being able to help people, because it's actually like a sustainable practice that rewires your brain so that you're no longer always getting stuck on those hangups and those patterns or falling back. So now I do like insight and like the actual practice of changing your mind. So it's not as fluffy as being like, oh, imagine yourself in a situation 3 months from now, and what is it that you would want, and how would you be feeling, and how are you going to get there, and da 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 da. Because if you're an emotional hijack all the time, 95% of the time, it's really hard to stay committed to your goals and take action and get out of bed and all of those things. Wow. So yeah, so pretty transformational. I really would love for it to be taught in schools, and it's contagious. So I had a client this morning who was really not good a couple of weeks ago, and she got on the phone today and she's like, I can't believe it. She's like, I didn't think this was possible. So
that's amazing.
I know. See, and like that's the thing where you're like, oh, that feels so good, and that's why I became a coach, because of that. That's why this feels so good. Being in your heart and being present with other people, and just like getting to witness them transform. Like it's transforming. So they're actually no longer like alchemizing. It's like taking all the pain and the drama and the disappointments and all the drama, and you're actually like alchemizing it into like, oh, well, that happened for a reason. Now, of course, when someone's hijacked and you say to them, oh, well, everything happens for a reason, it doesn't work because they're hijacked. But on the other side of that, there can be that acceptance of like, well, even though I don't think that it should have happened, it did. So can I accept it and process it, and that kind of stuff. So
do you consider yourself like a life coach or a health coach, or how do you classify what you do?
I call myself a life coach and a mental fitness trainer.
Okay, a mental fitness trainer.
Yeah, life coach, mental fitness trainer. And people are either confused or intrigued by the mental fitness training part, because I haven't really heard that before.
No.
I think
I've never heard of it.
So most people kind of, and even like you say life coach, and people are, I think the first instinct is like, haha, cool. Like, what does that even mean? Yeah. And I was kind of sort of trying to find like a different way to say it, but at the same time, it's like, what? I am a life coach. Like, I love helping people with all of their problems, because like some people are relationship coach, career coach, anxiety coach. I have debated going more along the anxiety route and giving it that name, but I also don't love titles. I don't love titles and labels. That's another thing I have kind of against the healthcare system and the mental health industry, for sure. Mental health in general is like, we're so quick to give people labels. Yeah. And again, on that identity level I was talking about, when we identify with the labels we've been given, it can be really limiting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I found that really, even with my patients at the pharmacy, I found it really disappointing and disempowering for them, because they'd see like a psychiatrist for like 5 minutes. And I had a young woman, this beautiful woman, come in, and she's like, Holly, she's like, you've known me for years. This psychiatrist just talked to me for 10 minutes and he told me I'm bipolar and gave me this prescription. What do you think? Yeah. And I had to, I just let her kind of, I'm like, well, how do you feel about that?
Yeah.
And she's like, I don't think that that's right. She's like, I hardly talk to him. And like, how can he just make that decision in 10 minutes? And this is what's happening. People are, burnt out, stressed, have been in a pandemic for a year and they don't know where to go and they leave it so long, and then they finally go to a doctor or they talk to somebody and it's like, well, you're depressed. Have this pill. Enjoy. And I have the other point of view from the pharmacist side of like, if I questioned any of it, the doctors are like, well, Holly, if I don't write this prescription, what if something happens?
Well, yeah, exactly.
Which is fear. They're prescribing out of their own fear. Part of it, if you think about it that way, because it's like, oh well, if it doesn't show in their chart that I intervened with a pill, then I have no proof that I did anything. It's like, well, you could have sat and listened for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
but they don't, and it got worse with the pandemic too, because like the clinic that I worked with, they shut the doors, like a lot of clinics did.
Wow.
So they were no longer seeing people face to face, and it was pretty interesting, for sure. Anyway, I can't remember how I got there, but I'm like,
Do you think the pandemic brought up like new mental health issues in people, like all the depression and the anxiety and things like that? Or do you think those were always kind of there in the background and they're just kind of being brought forward by the stress and everything?
My personal belief, and from my own experience and my experience in healthcare and having my coach training and my mental fitness practices and all that, and going all the way back to labels. Again, I'm one of those people that's kind of like, I don't know if I believe in mental illness. I think we all enter these states.
Yeah.
I think we all enter these states of sadness, anxiety, and we don't know how to interpret them as physiologic messages from our body, and we just try and make them go away, and we get stuck in them. And I find it very disheartening that we have this whole system that's set up on, well, your insurance only gets paid if we know what's wrong with you, so there must be something wrong with you. And so many people are then focusing on, well, I must have a problem. There must be something wrong with me. I shouldn't feel like this if I was normal. And so I definitely do think the pandemic has exacerbated a lot of issues that people probably did already have. And I think it's also shining a light on the fact that people do not have coping skills. They are lacking resilience.
Definitely.
And again, it's we're not taught these things. Like, if you think about it, a little kid, because I hang out with little kids, I know that little kids are very in their body, they're very present. And I know that ego formation's like right around 3-4 years old. So I've watched my niece. I'm watching her ego develop right now. And I can see the same things that happened with me and my family happening to her. And a lot of it is not mental illness, I don't think. Again, I think it's really just like our own inability to regulate our nervous system, to get ourselves out of that emotional hijack, to stay present. And again, that whole space. I think a lot of parents don't know how to hold space for their own emotions, and never mind their children's. So we get a lot of, be quiet, don't be so dramatic, don't be so big, don't be so loud, don't be so whatever, just because, again, if the parents were more resilient and able to manage their own stuff, and then we call it underlying mental illness. And I'm like, I don't think the whole world has an underlying mental illness. I just think we lack, resilience. Nobody's teaching nervous system regulation. Nobody's teaching like how normal this is, and how even, the high achieving, super successful people have thoughts going through their mind. Like, most of them are miserable. Which was also the thing. Like, when I actually got honest and started telling people how I was struggling, they were like, you, the successful pharmacist with the fancy truck that travels all the time and da-da-da-da. And it's like, yeah, me.
Yeah.
Thanks.
It's like, so, people act like you don't have the right to feel that way because you are successful and because you have this life and you have this money and everything else. That you don't have a reason or a right to complain about it.
which I think we saw too. I didn't watch the Meghan Markle interview that came out with her and the prince. I don't know if you heard of that or saw that.
I didn't watch it. I saw like little clips of it, but
yeah, because there was some stuff that came up about that too. It was like that example of like someone with her amount of privilege and resources and couldn't get the help, and people are like, well, I don't believe that. And it's like, and often we do it to ourselves. Like there is that as like, again, I don't love the labels, but typically like white people that are comfortable, we do diminish our own problems because we're like, oh, well, so many other people have it worse than I do. And we're just we're invalidating ourselves. So.
Yeah, we talked about like white people problems or like first world problems and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Which doesn't mean that what's going on in our brains and our bodies aren't real. Like it doesn't mean we're not having that experience, because that's the thing.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean you have to agree with the experience or think that the reaction is, what would the word be, like suitable. Because, when somebody's super dramatic or has this blowout and you just don't even understand, it just doesn't match the scenario. We're quick to be like, well, that was inappropriate or shouldn't have happened or da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And it's like, yeah, but it did. And if we just maybe encourage more of that, or there were safe places for that, like with my 4-year-old niece, like I've been trying to help her with somatics. No. Well, what happens in your body when you get mad at your friend for taking your toy? Like, tell me. Anyway, it's all, like I said, it's all, I think, very good. Are you familiar with this? Do you know Nicole LePera?
No.
This is an amazing book. I'm not quite done it, but she's got an Instagram account. And a lot of the stuff that I've said here today about like nervous system regulation, and she was a traditionally trained psychologist in the States with like a master's degree. Very similar story to mine. Realized she wasn't really helping people doing what she was doing. Realized she had a lot of her own issues and problems.
Oh, did you post about her recently?
Yeah, I share her work quite a bit.
Yeah, I think I saw that. I'm gonna have to look into that.
And I mean, again, it's like, I love finding this kind of stuff because it also just confirms that I'm on the right path, because the stuff that I teach and train in is like very similar to hers, but it's already in a nice little program and it's simple and it's teachable. Because I think that we need to uncomplicate things.
Yeah.
Because again, we're making like access to things. It's that whole like, people need to get to the resources that can actually help them and know where to find them, and they need to be simple and easy to use and available.
Thanks for tuning in today. Tune in next week for part 2 of my conversation with Holly as we dive more into mental health and the concept of mental fitness. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Feel free to reach out at any time. You can contact me on Instagram and Facebook at Stomp the Stigma YYC, and you can email me at stompthestigmayyc@gmail.com. If you like the podcast, please like and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or Apple Podcasts. And if you or someone you know would like to come on, I would love to have you. Share your story, speak your truth, and together we can stomp the stigma.